My name is Nathan Bridgewater. For 38 years, I believed I was the middle child of a struggling factory worker. I thought my life story was simple and complete. I was the son who wired money home every month without fail, the brother who never missed a holiday meal, the man who sat beside his mother through 6 brutal months of chemotherapy, holding her hand while the cancer slowly took her away. I believed I knew exactly who I was, until one rainy Tuesday in March shattered everything I thought was true. My mother, Dorothy, was dying at Cleveland General Hospital, her body finally giving in to the disease that had been consuming her for months. Machines hummed and monitors beeped as my brother Dennis stood near the window, endlessly scrolling through his phone. My sister Marlene sat in the corner, calmly filing her nails as if this were any ordinary day. They'd always felt colder than me, more distant, but I assumed that was just how families worked. Suddenly, Dorothy's eyes flew open with a sharpness I hadn't seen in weeks. Her frail fingers, icy and fragile like bird bones, clamped around my wrist with unexpected force. She pulled me close enough that I could smell antiseptic mixed with decay on her breath. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice brittle and trembling, "I have to tell you something before I die. You're not my son." I thought the morphine had confused her. I tried to pull away to call a nurse, but her grip tightened. "Listen to me," she said. Louder now, loud enough that Dennis stopped checking his phone and Marlene froze mid-motion. "I stole you from a billionaire's family in 1985. Your real name is Christopher Rothwell. Your father owns half of Manhattan." The room fell completely silent except for the heart monitor, which began to race. Dorothy's eyes rolled back, her grip loosened, and within 20 minutes she was gone. The final words my mother ever spoke were a confession that I had never truly been her son. Dennis was the first to move. He crossed the room in seconds and slammed me against the wall, his oil-stained mechanic's hand smearing grease across my shirt. "I always knew something was wrong with you," he sneered. 38 years pretending to be our brother. "And you didn't even know it." Marlene stood slowly, her grocery store name tag still pinned to her uniform from her shift that morning. "That's why Mom looked at you differently," she said coldly. It wasn't love. It was guilt. They threw me out of the hospital before Dorothy's body had even cooled. Dennis yanked my wallet from my pocket and took the $300 I'd brought for funeral expenses. Payment for 38 years of freeloading. "You bastard," he laughed as security escorted me outside. Just like that, my family was gone. I spent the next 3 months sleeping at the Burke Lakefront homeless shelter, picking up day labor when I could, trying to process the fact that my entire life was built on a kidnapping. I had no documents, no family, no proof I existed. Nathan Bridgewater was the son of a woman who stole a baby. Christopher Rothwell was a missing child, a ghost lost for nearly 4 decades. Then yesterday afternoon, 2 men in tailored suits approached me in the shelter's food line. One introduced himself as Roger Blackstone, a private investigator. The other, Anthony Carell, said he was an estate attorney. They told me they had been looking for me ever since my mother's deathbed confession became a brief story in the local newspaper. "Your biological father is Sterling Rothwell," Blackstone said, showing me a DNA report taken from a coffee cup I'd tossed in the trash. "He owns 43 commercial properties in Manhattan, valued at approximately $2.4 billion. He's been searching for you since 1985. He never believed you were dead." Carell opened his briefcase and removed a will. My name, my real name, Christopher Sterling Rothwell III, was listed as the sole beneficiary. "Your father is dying," he said quietly. "He has maybe 2 weeks left. He wants to see his son before he passes." Then Blackstone leaned closer and spoke 7 words that froze my blood. 7 words that explained everything and nothing at the same time. Dorothy Bridgewater was Sterling's biological sister. My kidnapper wasn't a desperate stranger who'd stolen a baby out of grief. She was my aunt, my father's own sister, who raised me as her son while watching her brother build the empire she believed should have been hers. The family I had lost was never truly mine. The family I had never known had been searching for me my entire life. And the woman I called Mom had engineered the cruelest deception imaginable, one that stretched across 38 years and shattered multiple lives. I stood there inside the homeless shelter, wearing the same clothes I'd slept in for 3 days, holding paperwork that declared I was worth billions. I learned in that moment that my entire existence was a lie wrapped inside a crime, buried inside a family betrayal that stretched back generations. The rain that had begun the day Dorothy died was still falling outside, and I realized it might never truly stop. Growing up in Cleveland's industrial district meant waking to factory, whistles instead of birds, breathing air that tasted like rusted metal, and watching your parents age 10 years for every 5 that passed. Our duplex on Stockton Avenue sat wedged between 2 abandoned warehouses, the kind of neighborhood where delivery drivers double-checked their locks and pizza places refused to come after dark. But it was home, and for 38 years I believed I knew exactly what that word meant. My father, Harold Bridgewater, was built like a refrigerator, 6'3", with hands big enough to palm a basketball or twist free a bolt that hadn't moved in decades. He worked double shifts at the Cleveland steel processing plant, coming home near midnight coated in a layer of metallic dust that never fully washed away. "Hard work makes an honest man," he'd say, ruffling my hair with those massive hands. "Remember that, Nathan. We might not have much, but what we do have, we earned." Harold died when I was 15. A crane cable snapped during what should have been a routine lift, and 2 tons of steel beam fell the wrong way. The company mailed us a $20,000 check and a letter explaining they accepted no liability. Dorothy aged 10 years overnight, brown hair streaking gray at the temples, her shoulders folding inward as she sat at the kitchen table night after night, figuring out how to stretch that money and Harold's modest life insurance to raise 3 children alone. Dennis was 18 then, already working part-time at Kowalski's Auto Repair. He had Harold's build and Harold's temper, quick to anger, slow to forgive. He dropped out of his senior year the day after the funeral. "Man of the house now," he announced. What that really meant was drinking Harold's leftover Budweiser and shouting at me for reading too much. "Books won't put food on the table," he'd say. "College boy," he sneered, even though I'd never once mentioned college. It wasn't an option for kids like us. Marlene was 12, knobby knees, sharp tongue, already learning that the world didn't hand out favors. She'd secretly count the cash in Dorothy's purse when she thought no one was watching, calculating what we could afford for dinner that night. She started working under the table at 14, bagging groceries at Petrosky's Market and lying about her age with such confidence that even I almost believed she was 16. But I was different, and everyone knew it. Where Dennis and Marlene had Harold's dark brown eyes and heavy features, I had green eyes that Dorothy said came from somewhere deep in the family line. My hair was lighter, my frame leaner. I could do math in my head faster than Dennis could punch numbers into a calculator. When the electric company made a billing mistake, I was the one who caught it. Saved us $80 we couldn't afford to lose. "Nathan's the smart one," Dorothy would say, but she never looked at me when she said it. Her eyes would fix on a spot just past my shoulder, like she was seeing someone else entirely. After she'd had wine, which became more frequent after Harold's death, she'd sometimes cup my face with trembling fingers. "You look just like," she'd begin, then stop herself. "Like your grandfather, my father. He had those same eyes." I became the family accountant by default. Every Sunday I sat at our scarred kitchen table with Dorothy's checkbook, deciding which bills to pay now, which ones to delay, which creditors to call with promises we might not be able to keep. Dennis resented it, said I was acting superior. Marlene called me Mom's favorite. But there was no warmth in how Dorothy treated me. If anything, there was distance, careful and deliberate. Like I was something fragile she was afraid to break. After high school, I took a job at the Thurman Distribution Center, starting as a loader and eventually working my way up to warehouse supervisor over the next 15 years. The pay wasn't impressive, but it was reliable. Every month, without fail, I sent $500 home. Dorothy accepted it with that same distant expression. "You're a good son," she'd say, the words sounding practiced, like lines from a script she'd recited too many times. When Dorothy got sick, the pancreatic cancer arrived like a sudden storm. I was the one who took time off work to drive her to appointments. Dennis said he couldn't leave the shop. Marlene had just been promoted to shift manager at the grocery store and claimed she couldn't risk losing her position. So I sat in waiting rooms that smelled of disinfectant and fear, holding Dorothy's hand while poison dripped into her veins, praying it would kill the cancer before it killed her. The morning she died, we gathered at Cleveland General after the doctors said it wouldn't be long. Dennis complained about missing work. Marlene scrolled through her phone, occasionally glancing up to ask how much longer this was going to take. I sat beside Dorothy's bed, watching her chest rise and fall, wondering why it felt like I was losing someone I'd never truly known. Looking back now, I realized that feeling was right. I never really knew Dorothy Bridgewater, and she made sure I never knew myself either. Her confession shattered the hospital room like a brick through glass. As the heart monitor flattened and nurses rushed in, Dennis grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. What did she just say? His face was flushed, veins bulging in his neck the way they did when he was drunk and looking for a fight. Did she just say you're not her son? The medical staff pushed us into the hallway while they worked on Dorothy, but we all knew it was over. Marlene leaned against the wall, mouth hanging open, staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. She stole you from a billionaire? She asked. What the hell is she talking about? Dennis slammed me hard against the vending machine. I knew it, he snarled. I always knew something was wrong with you. The way you talked, the way you acted, always so superior with your numbers and your clean hands. You were never one of us. Dennis, I didn't know, I said, my head spinning, trying to understand what Dorothy had just revealed. How could I have known? Sterling Rothwell, Marlene said, already glued to her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Holy Dennis, look at this. Sterling Rothwell owns half of Manhattan. His company is worth billions. She scrolled faster. It says here his son was kidnapped in 1985 and never found. She looked up at me, eyes flat and icy. That's you. You're the stolen baby. A doctor stepped out to formally pronounce Dorothy dead, but Dennis and Marlene barely registered it. Their attention was locked on me now, circling like wolves who had just realized there was prey among them. 38 years, Dennis said, his voice rising. 38 years of mom feeding you, clothing you, putting a roof over your head, and you weren't even hers to raise. She was my mother, I said. She raised me. I'm still your brother. Brother? Marlene laughed, sharp and humorless. You're not our anything. You're some rich man's stolen kid. You think you belong here. You think you have any right to anything that's ours. We ended up in the hospital parking lot, Dennis shoving me forward while Marlene followed, still reading from her phone. It says Sterling Rothwell never stopped looking, she read aloud. He spent millions trying to find his son. There's a whole foundation dedicated to it. She glanced up at me with open disgust. While we were eating mac and cheese 4 nights a week, your real daddy was living in a penthouse. Dennis reached into my jacket and yanked out my wallet. That money was for Mom's funeral, I said, trying to grab it back. Mom? He laughed as he pocketed the $300. She wasn't your mom, remember? Consider this payment for all those years of freeloading. He tossed my empty wallet onto the asphalt. Dennis, Marlene, please, I said. Where am I supposed to go? Not our problem, Marlene said. She was already on the phone. I heard her say my name, my address, something about fraud. Yeah, he's been living under false pretenses. The real Nathan Bridgewater probably died years ago. This guy's some kidnapped rich kid. Security arrived before I could respond. Dennis told them I was harassing them, that I had no legal connection to the deceased. Check the records, he said. Dorothy Bridgewater had 2 children, Dennis and Marlene. This man is a stranger committing fraud. The guards escorted me out. When I tried to go to my car, Dennis held up my keys. You've been driving Harold's truck, he said. Harold Bridgewater was my father, not yours. The truck stays with family. I walked 4 miles back to my apartment, my head spinning through every memory, every moment that suddenly made sense. Dorothy's guilty glances, the way she flinched when I excelled at math, how she never wanted to talk about my early childhood, always claiming she didn't take many pictures because film was too expensive. My landlord was waiting at my door with a locksmith. Mr. Chen called, he said, avoiding my eyes. Mr. Chen was Dennis and Marlene's cousin, a small claims lawyer who suddenly had concerns. There are questions about your identity, he said. I can't have someone living here under fraudulent pretenses. He gave me 10 minutes to pack whatever I could carry. 10 minutes to pack 38 years of a life that had never truly been mine. I grabbed clothes. My father's watch, which wasn't really my father's, and a photograph of Dorothy that I couldn't bring myself to leave behind, despite everything. Dennis had already called my bank, reporting suspicious activity on an account he claimed Dorothy had opened. fraudulently under a false name. Every cent was frozen pending investigation. By nightfall, I was standing outside the Burke Lakefront homeless shelter with 2 garbage bags of possessions and no idea who I really was. Nathan Bridgewater was dead, or maybe had never existed at all. Christopher Rothwell was a ghost, a missing child from a world I couldn't even imagine, and I was trapped between them. A man without a name, without a family, without a single document proving I was anybody at all. 3 months at the Burke Lakefront shelter taught me that rock bottom has a basement, and that basement has a subfloor no one talks about. I went from warehouse supervisor to day laborer when I could find work, hauling furniture for cash, clearing out foreclosed homes, anything that didn't require paperwork. My hands, once soft from office work, split and bled. I learned which convenience stores threw out food that was still edible, which churches served meals without sermons, which corners to avoid after dark. Thursday afternoon began like any other. I stood in the shelter's food line, holding a plastic tray scrubbed 1,000 times but never quite clean. The man ahead of me argued about portion sizes. The woman behind me smelled like cheap vodka. I kept my head down. I'd learned that invisibility was the best survival strategy. Nathan Bridgewater, 2 men in suits that cost more than I'd made in a month, were suddenly standing beside me. The entire food line turned to stare. Men dressed like that didn't come to the Burke Lakefront shelter unless someone had died, or someone was about to be arrested. "I'm Roger Blackstone," the older one said, handing me a business card that read Private Investigator, with a Manhattan address beneath it. "This is Anthony Corville, estate attorney. We've been searching for you for 3 months. If this is about Dennis claiming I owe him money," I said, still gripping my tray, "there's nothing left to take." "It's about your father," Corville said. "Your biological father, Sterling Rothwell." The name hit me like ice water. I set the tray down before my hands could drop it. "How did you find me?" Blackstone lifted a clear evidence bag containing a discarded coffee cup. "DNA sample," he said, "from the cup you threw away yesterday at the convenience store on Euclid Avenue. We've been checking shelters, hospitals, churches. Your mother's confession made the local news, a small item buried on page 6, but Sterling has people who monitor every mention of the kidnapping." "Come with us," Corville said. "There's a conference room at the Marriott downtown. We need to talk somewhere private." I glanced down at my clothes, stained and worn too many times. I'm not exactly dressed for the Marriott. "Mr. Rothwell," Blackstone said, and hearing that name made my chest tighten. "You could be wearing a garbage bag and you'd still be Sterling Rothwell's son." The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Lake Erie. Corville opened a leather briefcase and spread documents across the polished table, birth certificates, DNA reports, photographs that made my hands shake, a baby with green eyes, the same eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. A young couple holding that baby, a woman with my exact shade of hair, a man with my jawline. "Your father is Sterling Rothwell," Blackstone said, sliding a recent photograph toward me. It showed an elderly man in a hospital bed, thin and pale but even dying. Power still radiated from his face. He owns Rothwell Real Estate Holdings, 43 commercial properties in Manhattan, including 2 entire blocks in Midtown. The portfolio is valued at approximately $2.4 billion. Your mother was Patricia Rothwell, née Morrison, Corville added, showing me another photo. A beautiful woman with green eyes, alive with warmth. She died in a car accident in 1988. Your father never remarried, never had other children. He said losing you both broke something in him that could never be repaired. Dorothy Bridgewater worked as a housekeeper for the family in 1985. Blackstone continued. She'd been told she couldn't have children after multiple miscarriages. On the night of October 15th, during a charity gala at the estate, she took you from the nursery. She'd planned it for months, fake documents prepared, a car waiting. She drove straight to Ohio, to a cousin who helped her create a new identity. Your father never believed you were dead, Corville said. The FBI, the police, everyone else eventually gave up. Sterling didn't. He hired private investigators, continuously for 38 years. He spent approximately $12 million searching for you. I stared at the documents, each page rewriting my entire existence. Why now, I asked. Why could you find me when no one else could? Dorothy's deathbed confession, Blackstone said. One of our analysts monitors news feeds for keywords tied to the case. When her name appeared alongside a confession involving a kidnapped child from 1985, we moved immediately. Your DNA confirmed what we suspected. He paused. Your father is dying. Corville spoke gently. Liver cancer. Stage 4. The doctors are giving him no more than 2 weeks. He paused. He wants to see his son before he dies. He wants to correct a 38-year injustice. He slid one final document across the table, thick as a phone book. This is his will. You are the sole beneficiary. Everything goes to Christopher Sterling Rothwell. That's you? I don't know anything about real estate, I said. I supervised a warehouse. I've been homeless for 3 months. You have the wrong person. We have exactly the right person, Blackstone said. But there's something else you need to know about Dorothy Bridgewater. Something we discovered while investigating her background. Something that explains everything. The private jet touched down at Teterboro Airport just as the sun dipped behind Manhattan. Through the window, the skyline rose before me. Those legendary towers of glass and steel. Sterling Rothwell had helped build. Blackstone had bought me a suit from the hotel gift shop. Nothing extravagant, but clean and properly fitted. I felt like an imposter wearing it. Like a homeless man playing dress-up, which in a way I was. The penthouse occupied the top. 2 floors of a 5th Avenue building overlooking Central Park. The elevator opened directly into the foyer, marble floors. Crystal chandeliers reflected in polished stone. A nurse in pristine scrubs met us at the door. He's been asking for you every hour, she said softly. He's lucid, but we don't know for how long. Sterling Rothwell lay in a hospital bed set up in what had once been his study. Beyond the windows, Manhattan glittered like a constellation he'd dragged down from the sky. He was smaller than I'd imagined, cancer having carved away what must once have been an imposing frame. But his eyes, when they found mine, were sharp as broken glass. Christopher, he whispered, tears slipping down his hollowed cheeks. You have Patricia's eyes. I've seen them in my dreams for 38 years. I approached slowly, unsure whether to take his hand, unsure what to call him. He solved the problem by reaching for me. His fingers skeletal, but his grip unexpectedly strong. Let me look at you, he said. My son, my boy. They told me you were dead, but a father knows. We talked for over an hour. Sterling asked about my life, wincing when I described the poverty, the struggle, Dennis and Marlene's cruelty. I failed you, he kept saying. I was supposed to protect you, and I failed. You couldn't have known, I said. Dorothy fooled everyone. Something shifted. In his expression then, something dark and heavy settling behind his eyes. He turned his head slightly toward Blackstone. Tell him, Sterling said. He needs to know everything. Blackstone pulled out a folder he'd clearly been holding back. When we investigated Dorothy's background, we discovered something unexpected. He paused. Dorothy's maiden name wasn't Wilson as she claimed on her employment records. It was Rothwell. The room fell silent except for the low hum of medical equipment. I looked at Sterling. His face collapsed inward, fresh grief carving deep lines into it. She was my sister, he said quietly. My half-sister, actually. My father's shame. Blackstone nodded. Sterling's father, your grandfather, had an affair with a housekeeper in 1955. Dorothy was the result. The family paid the woman to disappear, to never contact them again. But when her mother died, Dorothy learned who her father was. She came looking for money when she turned 18. He gave her $50,000, Sterling said, bitterness thick in his voice. Made her sign papers promising she'd never contact the family again. But she didn't want money. She wanted recognition. She wanted to be a Rothwell. So she came back under a false name, Corville added. She was hired as a housekeeper using forged references. She worked in your home for 2 years, watching you build your life with Patricia, watching you have everything she believed should have been hers. There's more, Blackstone said, pulling out a worn leather journal. We found this in Dorothy's apartment in Cleveland. She kept detailed records. He opened it to a marked page. Dorothy's handwriting was tight and furious. Sterling has everything because he was born on the right side of the sheets. His son will inherit billions while my children get nothing. But if I take the boy, raise him as my own, he'll still get everything eventually, just through me. I'll be his mother. I'll be the one he loves. The money will come to my family where it belongs. She didn't just steal you from a billionaire. Sterling said, his grip tightening painfully around my hand. She stole you from her own brother. She raised my son as hers while watching me build my empire, knowing every day that she was keeping my greatest treasure from me. But Harold, I said, struggling to process it all. Dennis and Marlene, were they? Harold's from a previous marriage, Blackstone confirmed. Dorothy couldn't have children, just as she told people. Dennis and Marlene were Harold's kids. She married him partly because he gave her a ready-made family, somewhere to hide you. Sterling began coughing then, dark specks of blood appearing on his lips. The nurse stepped forward, but he waved her away weakly. 2 more things, he rasped. First, I've already signed everything over to you. As of this moment, he swallowed hard. You're worth $2.4 billion. Corville has all the paperwork, Sterling said. Then he pulled me closer, close enough that I could smell medicine and mortality clinging to him. Dorothy wrote something else in that journal, he whispered. She said there were others. Other housekeepers. Other stolen children. She was part of something bigger. Find them, Christopher. Find them and bring them home. He died 2 weeks later, holding my hand, whispering my mother Patricia's name. At his funeral, attended by New York's elite, Dennis A. and Marlene appeared in ill-fitting formal clothes, standing out like misplaced extras on a polished stage. Brother, Dennis began, approaching me during the reception. We were emotional. Mom's death. It was shocking. My security team stepped forward, but I raised a hand. I'm not your brother, I said calmly. I never was. Dorothy made sure of that. You can't just leave us with nothing, Marlene said, her voice slipping into a wheedling plea. We raised you. We're family. You threw me out of a hospital and left me homeless, I reminded them. You took my last $300 and called me a bastard. Good riddance, I believe you said. 6 months later, I stood in the office that had once belonged to Sterling, staring out at the Manhattan skyline as the first snow of winter began to fall. The city that once felt like another planet now bore my name on 3 buildings. The leather chair still carried the faint scent of his cologne, and sometimes I caught myself turning to ask him a question before remembering he was gone. The first thing I did with the money was write 2 checks for $50,000 each, one to Dennis, one to Marlene. My lawyers thought I'd lost my mind. They have no legal claim, Corville reminded me. They treated you terribly. It's not about them, I said, signing the checks. It's about deciding who I want to be. Dennis cashed his immediately, probably before the ink had dried. Marlene sent hers back, shredded into confetti-sized pieces, with a note that read, I hope you choke on your billions. I had it framed. It hangs in my private bathroom, a daily reminder that money doesn't cure hatred. It only amplifies what was already there. The Burke Lakefront Homeless Shelter received an anonymous $10 million donation on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 6 months after 2 men in suits had found me standing in their food line. I delivered it personally, wearing the same clothes I'd worn when I lived there. Mrs. Holstead, the director who used to slip me extra blankets on freezing nights, recognized me instantly. Nathan, she said, then stopped herself. I'm sorry. I heard about everything. Christopher, right. Nathan's fine, I said gently. Nathan was the man you helped when he had nothing. Christopher is just the one who signs the checks. She broke down crying when she realized what the donation meant. And for the first time in my life, standing there with nothing to prove and nothing to hide, I knew exactly who I was. She froze when she saw the amount. This will keep us running for 20 years, she said softly. We can expand, add mental health services, job training programs. Good, I said, because I'm going to need your help with something bigger. The Patricia Rothwell Foundation, launched 3 months later with a $100 million endowment. Its mission was simple to describe and overwhelming to carry out. Find the other stolen children. Dorothy's journals had hinted at. Blackstone, whom I'd hired as the foundation's director, had already uncovered a disturbing pattern. Between 1980 and 1990, 17 wealthy families reported kidnapped infants who were never recovered, he told us at the first board meeting. In 12 of those cases, a housekeeper or nanny had recently quit or vanished. Dorothy's journals referenced 3 other women by first name only, Linda, Susan, and Marie. We believed they had been working together. We found the first one 8 months later, a man in Detroit named Michael Thompson, Learned he was actually Michael Pearson, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. His mother, Linda, had died 5 years earlier, taking the truth with her. We reunited him with his biological father, who had spent 35 years believing his son had drowned during a botched kidnapping. The second discovery was harder. Susan had raised her daughter, Jennifer, in deep poverty in rural Kentucky while Jennifer's biological parents searched the world for her. The reunion played out across every news channel. Jennifer clinging to parents she'd never known existed, trying to reconcile love for the woman who raised her with the truth of a lifetime built on lies. But it was the third case that broke me. Marie hadn't stolen just one baby. She'd taken twins. She separated them, selling one to a desperate couple in Canada while raising the other as her own in Phoenix. The twins were 29 when we found them. They had lived their entire lives 300 miles apart, each carrying the same hollow sense that something was missing, neither knowing the other existed, both searching for the same answers. Dennis tried suing me 14 months after Sterling's death, claiming emotional damages and seeking $50 million for pain and suffering caused by Dorothy's deception. The case was dismissed in minutes. After that, he sent letters swinging wildly between threats and desperate pleas until Corville secured a restraining order. Marlene simply vanished, though I heard she married someone in Florida and told everyone her brother was dead. I kept Dorothy's photo, the one I grabbed from my apartment that terrible day, not out of love or nostalgia, but as a reminder. She had stolen me from my family, denied Sterling the chance to raise his son, denied me the chance to know my mother before she died, but she had also taught me something valuable, even if she never meant to. In trying to steal wealth for herself, Dorothy ensured I grew up understanding what it meant to have nothing. Every decision I make now, every donation, every investment in finding stolen children, comes from knowing both sides of the mirror. I have been homeless and a billionaire, nobody and somebody, Nathan Bridgewater and Christopher Rothwell, standing in that penthouse office, snow falling softly on the city Sterling built and I inherited. I realized the truth Dorothy never understood. Family isn't about blood, money, or the name on your birth certificate. It's about choosing to love when it would be easier to hate, choosing to build when it would be easier to tear down, choosing to search for truth even when lies are more comfortable. The Rothwell Foundation has reunited 43 stolen children so far. Some reunions are joyful, others complicated, but all are necessary. Each one is a small correction to a massive injustice, a family rebuilt from the ashes of someone's greed. Sterling searched for me for 38 years and found me just in time to say goodbye. Now I search for others, hoping they get more time than we did. Sometimes I dream about Dorothy, and in those dreams I ask her if it was worth it. Did stealing me bring her the satisfaction she craved? Did raising her brother's son as her own fill the hole where recognition should have been? She never answers. She just stares at me with those guilty eyes, which I now understand were seeing not her stolen son, but her brother's face staring back at her, a daily reminder of what she had done. The 7 words that changed everything still echo in my mind. Dorothy Bridgewater was Sterling's biological sister. 7 words that explained a lifetime of lies, proving that greed can corrupt even the closest bonds. Blood alone doesn't make a family, but it can make a monster. My name is Christopher Sterling Rothwell III. I was stolen as a baby by my aunt, raised in poverty while my father searched the world for me, finding me just in time to watch him die. But I am also Nathan Bridgewater, the warehouse worker who held his dying mother's hand even as she confessed to destroying multiple lives. I am both and neither. Rich and poor, found and forever a little lost. The fortune Sterling left me isn't truly mine. It belongs to every stolen child still out there, every family broken by greed, every parent who never stops searching. I am merely the guardian of resources that can bring people home. Dorothy stole me to claim a fortune that was never hers. Now I use that fortune to undo crimes like hers, one recovered child at a time. And maybe in that way, the 38 stolen years mean something after all. If this story touched your heart or reminded you that family isn't always what it seems, take a moment to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories that prove life is stranger and more powerful than fiction. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that might change the way you see the world. Remember, sometimes the family that searches for you for decades is worth more than the family that raised you with lies.